mechanics of creation and manifestation. Is there a deeper value of the 8 limbs of yoga? So that's the question that we're going to try and answer. And here's a picture of Maharishi Patanjali, the founder of yoga, or the father of yoga, we can say, and author of the Yoga Sutras, the principal textbook of yoga. So we'll start with the first 2 verses of the Yoga Sutras, then we'll go into something you haven't seen before. The first verse of the Yoga Sutras is Atha Yoga Nushasanam. Now is the teaching on yoga. What does that mean? This was an insight that sort of came to me in the night. What this means is now, the word now is the core teaching of yoga. And this first word now encapsulates the entire teaching. Maharishi said that with all the Vedic literature. So how can that be true? Be in the present, be in the now. Now is the only reality that exists. Be in the now. So that's the whole teaching of yoga, is to be in the now. Don't get caught up in random thoughts that drag you into the past or the future. How to do this? We'll look at the second verse. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the complete settling of the activity, the vrittis, the fluctuations of the mind. So we need to settle the mind. How to achieve this? The 8 limbs of yoga provide a comprehensive set of tools for settling the mind, for achieving yoga. So let's start with yama, the first limb of yoga. And the interesting thing is, just like the first word of the Yoga Sutras now encapsulates all of the Yoga Sutras, yama, we'll see, actually contains a total knowledge of all the limbs of yoga. So the first limb of yoga, yama, has 5 components, the 5 yamas. They're commonly understood as ideal practices to be followed in daily life. Ahimsa, usually translated as nonviolence or compassion, or like not stepping on an ant. Satya, being truthful, not lying, being true to yourself. Asteya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya, celibacy or energy directed inward and upward. And aparigraha, non-possession, like giving all your possessions away and going to live in a cave or something. But next slide, we're just going to go into a deeper understanding. Is there a deeper value of the 5 yamas? And that's 5 steps to ground in one's higher self, lively silence, which is the yama value. Yama is that silence that it's sometimes considered to be the god of death. Maharishi said the lord of emptiness, of silence. So we're going through a procedure. So this procedure, the first step of the procedure is close your eyes. I'm leading through you like a technique, and you can go through it later if you want. Close the eyes for experiencing the 5 yamas. It's a practical technique for experiencing the yama value. Ahimsa, non-violence, the deepest value of that is surrender to unconditional love for everyone and everything. So that's when we're in that unconditional love, we're in that state of non-violence. So it's not just I'm mood making, I'm not stepping on ants, it's being in that state of unconditional love. That fulfills ahimsa. The second of the 5 yamas is satya, which is translated as being truthful, but within that love, be aware of the body, be in the here and now, grounded, because listening to your body brings you into the now. You're no longer thinking about what you're going to have for lunch later, or worried about something that someone said to you yesterday and you're anxious about. Bringing into your body grounds you into yourself in the here and now. So that's the second step. So first we surrender to love, then we become aware within that love, aware of our body. Then asteya is translated as non-stealing. Maharishi says it's the quality of unity consciousness. We're in unity, we're not stealing anything because we are everything. We are the entire universe. So asteya is within that love, let your awareness expand to encompass the entire universe. Then we're in that state of asteya, where the entire universe, we're not stealing because we are everything. So we first experience love, eternal love, then we're aware of our body, then we let our awareness expand to encompass the entire universe. Then brahmacharya, which is, translated as celibacy, but it really means, if we translate the word in two parts, it's Brahma is wholeness, Chara is seated in wholeness. And this just happens automatically when you go through those first three stages. This is what just dawned on me. There's a wholeness that dawned, and we can become aware of the natural oscillatory flow of love, which is toroidal, and I'll show you a picture of that in the next slide, from the body to the universe and back. So we just sit there and we're aware of this energy field flowing, and we're seated in that wholeness. There's a result of wholeness. Our energy is up, is moving up. It's like blissful. And I put in a slide that Alana hasn't seen yet, which will be the next one. But now, then the 5 is a parigraha, which is translated as non-possession, which is like being a witness. So it's not giving away our possessions, it's just being a witness to them, like cosmic consciousness. Be a witness to those pulsations. They aren't us. We're experiencing our higher self. We're in our higher self, the witness to those pulsations of love between everyone and everything. We surrender to that process. And so that's, now here, I'm going to show you a diagram of this oscillations in space. So first, this brahmacharya corresponds to oscillations in space. I'm just showing the 3 fundamental issues, or qualities. One is space. A parigraha is simultaneity of time. We're experiencing all these pulsations of love between everyone and everything. And then surrender to unconditional love is all within consciousness. So the time, space, and consciousness are united here. And we repeat this cycle over and over. And we get deeper and deeper into the state of bliss and unity. So these oscillations in the body are illustrated in the next slide. And Alana actually showed us a slide like that. But this is the oscillations of prana going up and around and up and around. We can be sitting in a chair. Frill is a word. I got this diagram from Dan Willis. He's sort of teaching about crystals and crystal technology, and frill is another word for prana. It's a more universal word. And he's actually got a crystal in his hand that he's using to accelerate or strengthen the flow of prana in his body. And I could talk about that later if you wanted. But anyhow, so next, the 5 yamas with the tree visualization. So in a recent healing webinar I was invited to, the fellow did a tree visualization. I realized, oh my gosh, that's a different way of tapping into the same 5-step process, and it's more concrete. So experiencing the 5 yamas with a tree visualization. So we'll go through the same process with a few different words. Close the eyes. So we would surrender to unconditional love, but the corresponding thing is visualize yourself as a tree is the first step. Then the heart chakra is enlivened by surrendering to love. Then the second step within that love, it's like be grounded, which is like be aware of the body, be grounded. So experience your roots growing deep into the ground because you're a tree. The third, and that connects you to the root chakra, to the earth. The third step is let your awareness expand to the universe. So the step is experiencing your branches going up to the sky and beyond. So that's the third stage. And that connects with your crown chakra, which is going upward to the sky and beyond. Then the 4th step, brahmacharya, is seated in wholeness. Experience yourself as a bridge pulsating with love. As this tree, all the energy is going up through you, connecting to the entire universe. So you're that bridge. And it's also coming back down, pulsating back and forth, but we also have that toroidal flow. And that is like your expanded heart chakra, because you're like everyone and everything. And aparigraha, the last step, you witness to those pulsations, the churning of love. And his last step is putting up in this, healing that I went to, is putting up an energy shield or dropping a gold net of protection. So when you're a witness, it's sort of like you're not involved. It's kind of like when you're doing a healing with someone, you need to create a distance to separate so you don't, take on the stress and stuff like that. So it's like putting up an energy shield, or Alana's friend told me dropping a gold net of protection. Cindy said that. Okay. And next, the 5 yamas with another analogy, the banyan seed analogy, and that'll be the third analogy. So just realize how universal this is. Experiencing the 5 yamas with the banyan seed analogy, all of creation emerging from the pulsations of hollowness. And this is like in the Upanishads, I think, where it talks, a student goes up to his teacher and asks, what is the source of creation? He says, the teacher says, the guru says, take a banyan seed and break it open, and within that smaller seeds, and within that is hollowness, and hollowness is the source of creation. So we're going to experience ourselves as the unmanifest hollow banyan seed that gives rise to the appearance of creation, and that's Maya. So the first steps, we're then going through 5 steps. Surrender to unconditional love for everyone and everything. And that's what this pinkness is, the unconditional love we're surrendering to. Within that love, be aware of your body, be in the here and now. So here's the individual body as like a point. And within that love, let your awareness expand to encompass the universe. So from the individual body, we've expanded through love to experience the cosmic body, the whole universe. Embrace the totality of creation churning with love. So from the individual to the cosmic body, from the cosmic and back, all churning with love. And this is like at every point of creation, we're experiencing that. Within the churning, witness the churning of love between everyone and everything. Surrender, let go, and trust. And then between them is an empty hollowness, and that's where creation comes out. Creation comes out of the duality of separation, individual and universal. And this is the hollowness of the banyan seed. Out of that hollowness, that separation of unity into parts, is the source of creation. And we're going to go a little more into that. Next, the highest value of the 8 limbs of yoga. This is interesting. In 1974, Maharishi said that underlying and maintaining the entire creation is a continual pulsating between fullness of fullness, which is infinite dynamism, and fullness of emptiness, infinite silence. Maharishi said the highest value of the 8 limbs of yoga is in maintaining this pulsation. Can we locate this pulsation in the role of the 8 limbs of yoga in maintaining this process? And the answer is yes. We already actually just located this pulsation with the structure and dynamics of the 5 yamas. So this is the pulsation between fullness and emptiness, infinite silence, and infinite dynamism that underlies creation. We just saw that. So let's look at that. All of creation emerging from the pulsations between fullness, infinite dynamism, and emptiness, infinite silence. Experience, so here it is. And we've got all of creation emerging from the pulsations between. This is infinite silence, the point value of the body, infinite dynamism of the whole universe and creation emerging from that. So we fulfilled this question of Maharishi, or what he said, we found it. But let's go a little further. So Maharishi elaborated on this underlying pulsation phonetically in the dynamics of Atma. And we'll see this in the next slide. And in deeper detail in the tenfold Brahm, which is the following slide after that. So here is So most of the other slides so far did not have much detail. So take a breath, but you've seen this before. This one has a little detail, but this is what Maharshi said is the dynamics of Atma, which is like the pulsation of, the banyan seed. In the previous slide, it was just like one step back and forth. Now he says there's 8 steps phonetically. A, I, U, Re, like the circling, or A, I, U, Re, the circling around, 4 steps going outward, and then there's 4 vowels going backward. The Re, A, O, So A, I, U, Re, the Re, A, O, So it's this pulsation backwards and forwards that he says underlies creation. From A to Ma and Ma to A, from being to becoming and becoming back to being. 4 stages in, 4 stages out. The underlying hum of creation that people talk about. And these are the 8 svaras, the 8 vowels, which is the reverberations of self, the reverberations of Atma. And the word cradle here I put in because it's like Krishna rocking in the cradle, baby Krishna. And this is the enlivened state of awe. So now, what comes out of this? So is a question, but we're now looking at Maharshi's tenfold Brahm, which provides a broader, more abstract perspective. So this is another way of looking at the banyan seed in more detail, or that underlying source of creation. But now we're going to look at the stages of how things come out, what comes out next. The tenfold Brahm is a more abstract way. Creation emerging from the pulsations between fullness and fullness of emptiness. So the first stage of the tenfold Brahm is like, it's abstract. It's sort of like Brahm without qualities, and that's fullness of emptiness. And it's called Nirguna Brahm, sort of like pure, abstract, unqualified silence. Out of that, the second stage is like dynamic silence, qualified Brahm. Then then each side knows the other side through memory. One remembers the other side, each one remembers the other. So this is the most, I hope this is okay. It's a little complicated, but I wanted to put it in. And then the so the memory is what connects the two, and there's a reverberation back and forth, which is Atma. So here we see our old friend Atma from the previous chart, Atma and Ma to A. It's now, instead of being the first stage, it's the 4th stage. We had to start with Brahm without qualities, Brahm with qualities, then a resonation back, memory and a resonation. So this is the same knowledge, but represented in a different way, in a different kind of like language. And inside this reverberation is like fire, Agni, friction, and out of that fire, that friction, there are coming outside, then there's a room to expand, and creation comes out of that. And so this is so far 6. The 6 stages so far of the tenfold structure of Brahm. Then there's 4 more stages, which is this. The 7th is the name of the seer who saw this. The 8th is just his process of cognition. The 9th, Maharshi said, is undivided prakriti. If these are like the 8 divided values, it's sort of like the reverberations within the transcendental consciousness is undivided prakriti, and the silence within that is infinite silence. So this is his tenfold Brahm. So there's going to be one more chart. Now that the following chart provides an even broader perspective leading to material manifestation back to Brahm. And this is kind of like the last chart with any detail, but it is like a summary. It's not as bad as the last one. So here's the tenfold Brahm. Out of that tenfold Brahm, from this corner, we get Atma. Out of Atma, which is the same as the pulsating banyan seed, out of that Atma, we get fire, Agni. Out of that fire comes Prachetna, which is the 10 mandalas of Rigveda. And out of those 10 mandalas of Rigveda, which, and there's also the Devi Veena is a musical instrument of Mother Divine. It's another way of representing that, because all of creation comes out of the dish, the musical instrument of Mother Divine. And what comes out is the second sixfold structure, the tenfold Brahm, which is like the body and the universe, Sharir and Vishwa, and then that unifies back. The whole thing is one united structure of Brahm, ultimate synthesis. And the Vedic quote for that is Ayam Atma Brahm, the self is Brahm. Because here we've got the self, here this whole cycle, this whole thing is Brahm. So this is like inner fullness, outer fullness. They're unifying. The unification of two fullnesses. This is, we think of it as like an inner pulsation, even in the heart. If we're sitting in, we're experiencing the energy going up and up and around and up and around. We've got the energy inside us, and we've got this toroidal flow all around us. That's like those two, that's like the outer synthesis. This is like the inner synthesis. For full details of everything, as I went through this quickly, trying not to take too much time. There was an earlier presentation that I did with Dorothy Rowe, which goes into all these stages, and you can see that for more details. So the summary of the presentation. So Maharshi inserted in 1974 the highest value of all limbs, 8 limbs of yoga is in maintaining this pulsation between fullness, and fullness of emptiness. We showed how the dynamics of the 5 yamas fulfill this role. But he said all 8 limbs of yoga do this. Can we show that all 8 limbs of yoga play a role in maintaining this pulsating? And that'll be the last slide, I think.
Okay, we are at 2:30, so I understand.
Okay, this slide. The role of the 8 limbs of yoga, maintaining the pulsating between infinite silence and infinite dynamism. So yama, the point value, infinite silence is this dot. Niyama, infinite dynamism, is like the other end. Asana, the 2 are seated together. And this is something Maharshi described in these 8 limbs. I'm not making this up. Asana seats the 2 of them together. Pranayama is the pulsation back and forth between them. Pratyahara is turning the senses inward. In order for this pulsation to continue, there needs to be an energy source within, and that's pratyahara. And then we've got dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, which together are sanyama, which is the mechanics of creation. So here we've got the mechanics of creation coming out of pratyahara.
Wow.
Okay, and here's Maharshi.